Hey, what's up? David here with After VideoFX and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be tackling on a very difficult project I encountered. It's basically like a creek animation with all this rocks and grass and flowers, and we got this nice water just coming in. It's like a babbling brook vibe to it. So I'm not going to go too much into detail for what I did. I'm just going to go straight into the tutorial. So without further ado, let's take a look at what we're going to be creating. Okay, so first thing I did was I created a plane and I used the sculpting tool just to sculpt this like indentation. So I might show you quickly what I did. So I'm just going to turn off all these particles. So if I go into sculpting, you can see how I use the inflate and deflate tool just to sculpt it out, just try to get the right type of look that I want to get. You can see I try to put on a curve as well, so like it's going like in this direction here. And be sure to turn on dynamic topology. So when you turn this on, every time you sculpt, it will create more detail to your object here. So the lower the number, the more detail you get, but just keep in mind it will slow down your render time in the viewport. So I suggest you just put at a value that's suitable for your hardware. Okay, so once you've done that, you'll get relatively okay plane. It's nothing too fancy because the camera's going to be pointing like somewhere here. And then next thing I did was I got my rocks here. So I'll show you how I created these rocks, but I just want to show you what I did. So I got rocks here. I've got some more smaller detail rocks here. I've got some grass and I got some flowers as well. So the way I set this up was I used a particle system because I don't really know geometry nodes just yet. And I just started playing with these values. So I made sure that the density was the one that I chose. So if I go into my vertex groups, you can see I've got 3 density groups. So I'll show you quickly. So I've got rocks, which is just along this area here. And then I've got my small rocks. And I've got my grass here, which is just these little areas that I wanted to paint. Just where the grass will end up. So yeah, those are my density groups. So if I go back into my object mode, I use that as the driving force to where these particles will emit. So you can see I've got my main rocks, which is this collection here. These 3 rocks. So those 3. And I got my small rocks, which is this one just over here. I got my flowers, grass, sorry, which is this like little tiny one right here. And I got my flower, which is right over here. Okay, I'll show you how I created these objects, but I just wanted to get through this first. So once you've done that, just set that as a particle system. So these were my values for each one. So I wanted to have some main rocks here. I didn't want to have too many. And you can change the seed just for the variation. So you can see how it just changes over time. My small rocks as well. My grass. And my flower. So you just make sure you set that to advance. Set it to the render as the collection. And choose your collection, which respective for your scene here. And yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Not much to go through. You do see a little bit of overlaying, but I'll explain how I fixed that shortly. Okay, let me show you quickly the material setup here. So let me just show you really quickly. So I might actually just go into EV mode just to speed up my render time. And let's have a look. I'll turn my screen keys as well. Man, I always forget. Okay, so you can see this is my setup here. So what it is basically I'm using a mask tool just to create like this. I would say. Let's go to the material preview. You can't really see it. It's hard to tell, but you can sort of pick it up. So all it is, I've got a mask tool here, and I use that to combine it with this material, which is just like this little dirt, and I've got this material as well. So I'm using that as like a mask just to cover up. So if I show you this quickly, put that through. Yeah, so you can see how it's just like a mask for these two materials, and all it is basically just the simple setup. And be sure to have your node wrangler on so that you can just quickly set up these materials very efficiently. So yeah, that's how I did it. And if you wanted to switch it up, you can always just add an invert, and then it'll switch. Just give it a minute. Yeah, there we go. So you can always just switch it up if you like, but I just left it like that. Okay, the way I got this mask tool is through texture paint actually. So all it is just basically just a blank black material, and be sure to UV unwrap this, and then you just paint it along the curves. It will play in real time, but I don't want to set it up right now because then I'll just have to change it back, but I don't want to do that. But I think you'll get the idea. So if you guys want an actual depth tutorial on how I created this, please comment below. Maybe that's the best way for you guys to learn. I'll just go back in here, and that's how I created my material setup here. So very straightforward. Just set this to Eevee. Okay, so let's actually move on to like the individual objects. So these grass, rocks, and the flowers of how I set that up. Okay, so here's the rocks collection. So the material setup for this. I just want to give credit to CG Geek on his 1-minute tutorial on how to create a rock. So that's how I created these. So like if you want to learn how to create this rock, I suggest you just look up CG Geek 1-minute rock tutorial. I'll leave a link in the description below. So basically you got your usual materials here, and then all it is he's got like this color ramp feeding through the pointiness node. That's how he creates like these like little sharp edges here just to grow some shine here. And then he's got another object, another color ramp feeding through a random node to create some random colors as you duplicate them. So he's got a mix RGB node to overlay this color randomness with the base color. Put that through the mix RGB, and then you can just control the hue and saturation with this through the color through the color of the rock, and you put that through, and then bam, you got your color set up. Okay, so that's the rock setup explained. Let me show you how I did the plants. Okay, so here's my grass setup. So all it is, if I go into my rendered view, so you can see how it's just a piece of long grass. So I actually took this grass myself. I'll leave a picture up for how I took it. I took it just like on a flat surface and with even lighting, so make sure you don't have any harsh lighting because it will disrupt the translucency. And then I added in Photoshop, I took out the background, and then I imported it in here. Saved it and then imported here, sorry. So first things first, I'll just do a quick depth of the material setup. So I've got my image here. I'm feeding that through a glossy node just to get some glossiness. And I'm feeding the color output as well through a translucent. And the translucent is going through an add shader. Okay, and then I got the color through the principal shader. I might actually hide this. And then through the mix shader with the glossy, and then through that add shade as well. So if I just try to separate this, so you can try to see. So in summary, picture to glossy, picture to principal, both of these to mix shader, and then through an add shader, color to translucent, and then to add shader, voila, you got your translucent. And then I added a bit of bump as well. It's pretty straightforward as well. So just color to bump to normal. Pretty straightforward. Now, to get this as one object, you can't actually do this. You can't actually keep duplicating it. You got to actually put it into the same object. So what I mean by that is when you go into edit mode, go into the top view and actually duplicate it. So if you hit, turn my screen keys. Oops. So if you hover over one and hit L, that'll highlight the entire thing, and then you have to rotate it inside the inside of edit mode. You can't actually do it outside in object mode, so you have to do it like that. So if you hit L and then you turn on where was it? Connected only. That will just only adjust the object only. So if I just hit G, you can do this. But if I disconnect it, so if I just do like that, you can see how it's moving all the other points as well. So that's a friendly tip of mine. So remember that when you're doing it. Okay, so that's the grass. I'll just go on to the flower. Let's do assembled because that's pretty important. So I use this tree add-on. So if you go into edit preferences and just type in tree, you can use this sampling tree generator. Basically, it just adds a tree, so I can quickly show you that. So you go into curve. Tree generator. So basically, you can just adjust like all this kind of stuff. I don't know, you can just like adjust it, but I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that's how you do it. And then I use the particle system again to generate these grass blades inside of it. So I think I applied it. Did I apply it? I think I did. Yeah, this is the one that's not applied. So all it is basically a particle system on a tree, and then just had some grass blades coming out. And then I used, let's actually just close this for now. Oops. So I just weight painted the flowers for just to be on the tip of the tree. And then the leaves, I use like a gradient weight paint just to make sure that most of the grass blades are emitting from the bottom and then slowly just fades off as it gets to the top. Okay. And that's basically it. This is just the plane, so you don't really need that was just the flower, sorry, so don't worry about that. Okay, once you've done that, you get and apply that. I'll show you how to apply it first, later. So first things first is the plan. So it's just a principal shader through a mix shader and a translucent shader through the other shader, and just make those green, and you get like that little bit of that tree, that plant look. And then for the flowers, so if we come into the flower, the same setup as the grass. So it's just, so what I did was I took a flower and make sure it's in focus, got rid of the background, and then just imported that with an alpha. It's the same thing as I did with the grass, basically. And this material setup as well. And then once you've done that, save your project, and let's jump back into the other Blender file for how I connected it. Okay, so here we are back inside the project file. So it's really simple. All you have to do is go File, Append, and then you just look for your like two project files. So I got my grass and rock and file, and then you hit that, and you go into Collection, and then you can choose which collection you want. Or if you want to go to Mesh, you can actually pick the individual cubes and stuff like that. But I did it as a collection. So, and you just hit Append, and then there you go. It'll come up as like this, and all of the material setups and the settings will come through. So if I show you quickly, yeah, all the materials will be here. This a subsurface modifier would be applied here, but turns out I already applied it already, so it will be that. So yeah, and then just use that to emit the particles. And okay, so here's the tricky part. So what you have to do is, firstly, if you want the particles to be applied to your plane here as one object, because you will need to do that. So first things first is, let me just hide this. Let's just get a bit of space here. So first thing you want to do is you go into Object, Convert, Mesh. Okay, click that, and then you can see all of the particles disappeared. That's okay, and you want to keep original. Okay, and then so that will make a duplicate of your particles. And then what you want to do is click all of these make instances real. So that will create a duplicate file, duplicate objects, sorry, with all of these without the plane. Okay, and then once you've done that, then you can actually individually pick some of these rocks and move it around a little bit and shape it so that you don't get like these weird like, I don't know, collision or stuff like that. I don't know what the word is. Okay, and then you select all of the particles and then do blank mesh and hit Control J, and that will combine it into one object. Keep in mind though, that will take a bit of time, so just be patient with your hardware. Okay, so once you've done that, you can get one whole object that has got your particles and your rocks applied to it at the same time. Okay. Okay, so that's the surface and particles. Now everything else is pretty straightforward from here. So all it is just get your domain, your camera, your depth of field, all that kind of stuff. So with the fluid, so let's start off with the emitter, which is the inflow, which is, so I've got an inflow here that's just emitting the water. This is my domain. I'll show you my, so I set it to 150. I turned the timescale down. I turned the minimum steps to 1. I realized that I shouldn't have done that. I should have done at least 2 because I did get some glitchiness in the final render. So if you see glitchiness, that's because it's probably that. That's why. And yeah, I set the liquid, spray, foam, and bubbles, mesh. Yeah, straightforward stuff, guys. And then what else did I do? I've got an outflow. So if the water collides with this, it will just stop. It will just disappear. So I don't get this accumulated water inside of here. And then I've got my foam and bubbles. And where are they? Oh, there it is. Yeah, so those are my foam and bubbles. Let me show you the materials for these. So it's pretty similar for my fountain tutorial. So this is the foam. So that's the material setup. So I've got diffuse and glossiness through an add shader, and then transparent through the mix shader. I'm using the add shader to the mix shader, and I'm also using a random factor as to drive the factor so that we get some randomness to the transparency, and then you just put that through the material. And the bubble is just glass. That's all. Same goes for the water, it's just a glass as well. Okay, and once you've done that, that's your fluid simulation done. Let me show you my camera view. 50 millimeters. That's my camera view. My depth of field is right there, so I actually animated the depth of field so that it moves as the focus is where the water is. So it's just focusing on the water, and then it comes down as the water comes down as well. So you can see how this part is the glitchiness, obviously. Yeah. What else is there? I've got lighting as well, so I've got one just light here, and my HDR light. Is this, so it's like this outdoor forest vibe to it. Got this water simulation just coming down, and then I added just with my light, just it's pretty wide area lamp, so it's nothing too strong, just enough to get that little highlights here, and then my HDR is pretty straightforward. Try to get the lights to come from behind so that I get nice lighting set up here. My render settings. Oh, maybe I can show you my compositing tab first. Nothing much. I didn't do much compositing inside of Blender. Just some curves and the vector blur. I didn't even know this vector blur made a difference because it's going so slow. Okay, let's look at the render settings. So Full HD, render region, 30 FPS. Yeah, I made it 400 frames, and I made it start from frame 100, so that I can skip like all the water coming from all the way up there, and just start maybe like dribbling from down here. So yeah, it's starting from this point. So it's about 300 frames in total, and it's about 10 seconds if I make it 30 FPS. So yeah, that's pretty much it for how I created this tutorial. And it's just a lot of experimentation, a lot of research, and just time and effort to this project. So I highly recommend you should try yourself, try to push your skills, and reward yourself, okay? Give yourself some credit. And if you want to take notes, I definitely take notes all the time. Sometimes I forget a shortcut key, or there's like this little trick that I always forget to do. I just write down notes because that's the best way to learn. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. My name's David. I hope you learned interesting techniques that you can use for your own creations. As always guys, please give a like if you like this video so people can find it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and be sure to hit that bell button to get the notifications. And comment down below if you have any questions. And I will see you in the next video.